July 1st. Awesome. Beautiful. Codependent no more. I repent to have lost him. I repent to have lost him. He followed me everywhere, but I snapped him off with an air. He pursued me to listen to his sincere wishes, to win his fame and all his riches. But I'm bored of hearing it said I and don't mind staying without the fire. His ego was hurt, his mind disturbed, far off he went like lightning. Until I could catch sight of him, I twisted in bed all through the night, and the morning brought its light. I looked for him in lovely gardens. I climbed many mountains to reach him and swam 1,000 oceans to search him. I even looked for him in deep valleys. I fasted for days together, meditated for years in succession, but alas, 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 all is in vain. For now I am aged, having nothing gained. I cannot read, nor can I write, and successful in life's every field. So my only request to you young folks is try and gain knowledge wherever you go, for he comes but once to persuade you, and then flies away with time, never again to turn behind. Education is the only 9-letter word that has all the vowels in. Just as no word can be formed without a vowel, no man can be formed without education. So educate yourself now. Now turn around, see you have won. Education is the key to success. Please see, after reading this poem, a totally illiterate man asked his best friend to teach him ABCD, also the vowels A-E-I-O-U. Next day he started praying to God 5 times ABCD, EFGHIJK, LMNOPQRSTUVWXYZ. And on he went on saying A-E-I-O-U until it started sounding like A, I love you. On asking, he said God will form the words himself, so submit your all unto him. This little volume, the result of meditation and experience, as a man thinks, is not intended as an exhaustive treatise on a much written upon subject power of thought. It is suggestive rather than explanatory, its object being to stimulate men and women to the discovery and perception of the truth that they themselves are maker of themselves. By virtue of the thought which they choose and encourage, this mind is the master weaver, both of the inner garment of character and the outer garment of circumstance, and that as they may have hitherto woven in ignorance and pain, they may now weave in enlightenment and happiness. Thought and character. The aphorism, as the man thinketh in his heart, so is he, not only embraces the whole of man's being, but is so comprehensive as to reach out to every condition and circumstance of his life. A man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. As the plant springs from and could not be without the seeds, so every act of the man springs from his hidden seeds of thought and could not have appeared without them. This applies equally to those acts called spontaneous and unpremeditated, as those which are deliberately executed. Act is the blossom of thought, and joy and suffering are its fruit. Thus does the man garner in the sweet and bitter fruitage of his own husbandry. Though in the mind hath made us what thought in the mind hath made us what we are. By thought was wrought and built. If a man's mind hath evil thoughts, pain comes to him as comes the wheel of the ox behind. If one endure the purity of thought, joy follows him as his own cherished joy. Man is a growth by law and not a creation by artifice, and cause and effect are as absolute and undeviating in the hidden realm of the thought as the world, or visible and material things. A noble and godlike character is not a thing of favor or chance, but is a natural result of continued effort in right thinking. The effect of long cherished association with godlike thoughts and ignoble and wicked character by the same process is the result of the continued harboring of governing thoughts. Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought he wages the weapons by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tool with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. By the right choice and true application of thought, man's essence to the divine perfection, by the abuse and wrong application of the thought, he descends below the level of the beast. Between these two extremes are all the traits of character, and the man is the maker and master of all the beautiful truth pertaining to the soul, which have been restored and brought to light in this age. None is more gladdening or fruitful of divine promise and confidence than this, that man is the master of thought, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of condition, environment, and destiny. As a being of power, intelligence, and love, the lord of his own thoughts, man holds the key to every situation and contains within himself the transforming and regenerative agency by which he may make himself what he wills. Man is always the master, even in his weakest and most abundant state, but in his weakest and degradation, he is a foolish master who misgoverns his household. When he begins to reflect upon his condition and in the search diligently for the law upon which his being is established, he then becomes a wise master, directing his energies with intelligence and fashioning his thoughts to future issues. Such is a conscious master, and man can only thus become by discovering within himself the law of thought, which discovery is totally a matter of application, self-analysis, and experience. Only by much searching and mining are gold and diamonds obtained, and man can find where every truth connected with his being if he will dig deep into the mind of his soul, and that he is the maker of his character, the molder of his life, and the builder of his destiny. He may unerringly prove his usual watch control and alter his thoughts, stressing the effects upon himself, upon others, and upon his life and circumstances, linking cause and effect by patient practice and investigation, and utilizing his every experience, even to the most trivial everyday occurrence, as the means of obtaining that knowledge of himself, which is understanding, wisdom, power. In this direction, as in no other, is the Lord. So with that, he that seek find, and to him that knock it shall be opened. For only by patience, practice, and ceaseless importunity can a man enter the door of the temple of knowledge, effect of thought on circumstances. A man's mind may be likened to a garden which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weak seeds are fallen therein and will continue to produce their kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flower and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, impure thoughts, and cultivating toward perfection the flowers and fruits of the right, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever increasing accuracy how the thought forces, the mind elements, operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstance at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself that for the time being they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by the law of his being, the thoughts which he has built into his character and brought him there, and the arrangement of his life. There is no element of chance, but all is a result of the law which cannot earn. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with their surrounding as of those who are contented with them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is, that he may learn, that he may grow, and as he learns the spiritual lessons which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to another circumstances. Man is perfected by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions, but when he realizes he's a creative power and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being, out of which circumstances grow and then become the rightful master of himself. That circumstances grow out of the thought, every man knows who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification, for he will have noticed that the alternation in his circumstances has been an exact ratio with his altered mental condition. So true is this, that when a man is altered mental condition, so true is that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects of his character and makes swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. A soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspiration and falls to the level of unchastened desires, and circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind or to take root there produces its own blossoming, sooner or later into an acting bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstances. Good thoughts bear good fruit, bad thoughts bad fruit. The outer world of circumstances shapes itself to the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns both by suffering and bliss. Following the innermost desires, aspirations, and thoughts by which he allows himself to be dominated, pursuing the will of the whips of impure imagining, and steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor, a man at last arrives at the fruition and fulfillment in the conditions of its life. The laws of growth and adjustment everywhere obtain. A man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of corrupting thoughts and base desires. Neither is a pure-minded Man falls suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought has long been secretly fostered in his heart. The hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. Circumstances does not make the man, it reveals him to himself. No such condition can exist as a sentiment to vice, and his attendant suffering apart from the vicious inclination or ascending into virtue and his pure happiness without the continued cultivation of various aspirations. And man, therefore, as the Lord and Master of thought, is the maker of himself, shaper of and author of environment. Even as birth, the soul comes to its own, and through every steps of its earthly pilgrimage it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are the reflection of his own purity and impurity, his strength and his weakness. Men do not attract which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their innermost thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends in ourselves, which is our very self. Man is manacled only by himself. Thought and action are the judges of fate. If they imprison being base, they are also the angels of freedom. They liberate being noble. Not what he wishes and prays for does a man get, but what he does he earns. His wishes and prayers are not gratified and answered when they are harmonized with his thoughts and actions. In the light of the truth, what then is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that the man is continually revolting against the effect without, while all the time it means nourishing and preserving its causes in his heart. That cause may take the form of the conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor and thus calls aloud for remedy. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is true of earthly as well as heavenly things. Even the man with his sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make personal sacrifice before he can accomplish his object, and much more so he would realize that strong and meant for his life. Here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comfort should be improved. Yet all the time he shirks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of the sufficiency of his wages. Such a man does not understand the simple rudiments of those principles which are the basis of true prosperity, and is not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. Here is a rich man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as a result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste of rich and unnatural whims and have his health spoiled. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principle of a healthy life. Here is an employer of labor who adopts crude measures of avoiding paying the regulation wage, and in the hope of making larger profits reduces the wages of work people. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity, and then he finds himself bankrupt because he, both as regards reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of its condition. I have introduced these three cases merely as an illustration of the truth that man is a cause, though nearly always unconsciously, of his circumstances, and that while aiming at a good end, he is continually frustrating his accomplishment by encouraging thoughts and desires which cannot possibly harmonize with that end. Such cases could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely, but this is not necessary, as the reader can, if he so resolves, trace the action of the laws of thought in his mind and life. And until this is done, mere external facts cannot serve as a ground of reasoning. Circumstances, however, are so complicated, thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that man's desire, entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be just managed by the external aspect of his life alone. A man may be honest in certain directions, yet suffer privations. A man may be dishonest in certain directions, yet acquire wealth, but the conclusion usually formed that the one who fails because of his particular honesty and that the other prospers because of his particular dishonesty is a result of superficial judgment, which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt and the honest man is entirely virtuous. In the light of deep knowledge and wider experience, such judgment is found to be erroneous. The dishonest man may have Some admirable virtues that the other does not possess, and the honest man obnoxious voices that are absent in the other. The honest man reaps the good results of the honest thoughts and acts. He also brings about himself the suffering which has twice produces. Dishonest man likewise garners his own suffering and happiness. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has expiated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind, and washed every sinful stain from his soul, can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities, and on the way to yet long before he has reached that supreme perfection he will have found working in his mind alive. The great law which is absolutely just, which cannot therefore give good for evil, evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly altered, and that all his past experience good and bad were the equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. This is but saying that nothing can come from a corn but corn, nothing from nettles but nettles. Men understand this law in the mutual world and work with it, but few understand it in mental and moral world. Though its operation yet is just as simple and undeviating, and they therefore do not cooperate with it. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. Their soul and the supreme use of the suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases for him who is pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross had been removed, and perfectly pure and enlightened being could not suffer. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with blessedness are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness is not material possession, it's a measure of the right thought. Blessedness is not lack of material possession, is a measure of the wrong thought. A man may be cursed and rich, he may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and riches are only joined together when the riches are rightly and wisely used, and the poor man only descends into wretchedness when he regards his lord's burden unjustly imposed. Indigence and indulgence are the two extremes of wretchedness. They are both equally unnatural and the result of mental disorder. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is happy, healthy, and prosperous being, and happiness, health, prosperity as a result of harmony, adjustment to the inner with the outer, the man of with his surroundings. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile and commences to search for the hidden justice that which regulates his life. As he adapts his mind to that regulating factor, he ceases to accuse others as the cause of his condition and builds himself up in a strong and noble thought. Ceases to kick against circumstances but begins to use them as aids to his more rapid progress and as a means of discovering the hidden powers and possibilities within himself. Law, not confusion, is the dominating principle in the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of the life. Righteousness, not corruption, is the moving force in the spiritual government of this world. This being so, man has but to right himself, to find that the universe is right. During the process of putting himself right, he will find that as he alters his thoughts towards things, and other people, things and other people will alter towards him. The proof of this truth is in every person, and is therefore administered of easy investigation by systematic introspection and self-analysis. Let a man radically allow his thoughts and alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will affect in the material condition of his life. Men imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit. As habit solidifies into circumstance, bestial thoughts crystallizes into a habit of drunkenness and sensuality, while which solidify into circumstance of destination, destitution, and disease. Impure thoughts of every kind crystallize into innovating and confusing habits, which solidified into distracting and adverse circumstances. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and decision crystallize into weak and manly and pure youth habits, which solidify into circumstances of failure, indigence, and selfish independence. Lazy thoughts crystallize into habits of uncleanliness and dishonesty, which solidify into circumstances of foulness and deliberately hateful and contemplative thought crystallize into habits of accusation and violence, which solidify into circumstances of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts, all kinds of crystallize into habits of cruelty and cruelty, and contemplative thought crystallize into habits of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts, all kinds of crystallize into habits of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts, all kinds of crystallize into habits of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts, all kinds of crystallize into Habits of self-seeking which solidify into circumstances more or less distressing. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of grace and kindliness which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallize into habit of temperance and self-control will solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thoughts of courage, reliance, self-reliance, and decision and crystallize into many manly habits will solidify into circumstances of success, plenty, and freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize into habits of cleanliness and industry, would solidify into circumstances of plentiness. Gentle and forgiving thoughts crystallize into habit of gentleness, would solidify into protective and for preservative circumstances. Loving and selfish thoughts crystallize into habits of self-forgetfulness. For others, would solidify into circumstances of sure and abiding prosperity and true riches. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot really produce its results on the character and circumstance. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, so indirectly he will surely shape his circumstance. Nature helps every man to the gratification of the thought which he most encourages, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring to the surface both the good and the evil thoughts. Let a man cease from his sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften towards him and be ready to help him. Let him put away his weakly and sickly thoughts, and low opportunities will spring up on every hand to aid his strong resolves. Let him encourage good thoughts, and no heartbreak will bind him down to the wretchedness and shame. The world is your kaleidoscope, and wearing combinations of colors which are every succeeding moment is presented, you are exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. You will be what you will to be. Let failure find its faults contained in that poor word environment, but spirit scorns it and is free. It masters time, it conquers space, it calls with that boastful trickster chance and bids the tyrant circumstance uncrown and fill a servant's place. The human will, that force unseen, the offspring of deathless soul, can hew a way to any goal. The walls of granite intervene. Be not impatient in delay, but wait as one who understands. When the spirit rises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. Effect of thought on health in the body. The body is the servant of the mind. It obeys the operations of the mind, whether they be deliberately chosen or automatically expressed, and the bidding of unlawful thoughts. The body is sickness, rapidly introduces and declares the command of glad and beautiful thoughts, and begins sprouting youthfulness and beauty. Disease and health like circumstances that will fit in the thoughts. Sickly thoughts will express themselves in the sickly body. Thoughts of fear have been known to kill a man as speedily as the bullet, and they are continually killing thousands of people just as surely they are less rapidly. The people who live in fear of the disease are the people who created anxiety, which quickly demoralizes the whole body and lays it open to the entrance of disease. While impure thoughts, even if not physically indulged, will sooner shatter the nervous system. Strong, pure, happy, wild thoughts build up the body with vigor and grace. The body is a delicate and plastic instrument which responds readily to the thoughts which it is impressed, and habits of thoughts will produce its own effect, good and bad, upon it. Men will continue to have impure and poison blood as long as they propagate unclean thoughts. Out of a clean heart comes a clean life and clean body. Out of a defiled mind proceeds a defiled body and corrupt body. The thought is the count of action, life manifestation. Make the fountain pure, and all will be pure. Change of diet will not help a man if he would not change his thoughts. When a man makes his thoughts pure, he will no longer desire impure food. Clean thoughts have clean habits. The so-called saint who does not wash his body is not a saint. Who has strengthened and purified his thoughts does not need to consider the microbe. If you would perfect your body, guard your mind. If you would renew your body, beautify your mind, thoughts of malice, simply disappointment, dependency, despondency rob the body of its health and grace. The soul feast does not come by chance, it is made by soul thoughts. Wrinkles that mar are drawn by fallen passion and pride. I know a woman of 96 who was the bright face, innocent face of a girl. I know a man under middle age whose face is drawn into inharmonious contours. The one is the result of the sweet and sunny disposition, the other is the outcome of the passion and discontent. As you cannot have a sweet and wholesome abode unless you admit the errands and shine freely into your rooms, So a strong body and the bright, happy and serene countenance can only result from the free adaptation to the mind of thoughts of joy and goodwill and serenity. On the faces of the age, there are wrinkles made of sympathy. Others are strong and pure thought, the others are carved with passion but cannot distinguish them. With those who have lived righteously, ages calm, peaceful, softly mellowed, like the setting sun. I have recently seen a philosopher on the deathbed who was not only excerpt in years, he died as sweetly and peacefully as he had lived. There is no physician like cheerful thought of the sea, baking the ills of the body. There is no comforter to compare with goodwill for dispelling and dispersing the shadows of the grief and sorrow, to live continually in thoughts of regret, cynicism, and suspicion, and envy to be confined in the self-made prison hole. But to think well of all, to be cheerful with all, to patiently learn to find the good in all, such unselfish thoughts are the very portals of heaven, and to dwell day by day in thoughts of peace towards every creature will bring abounding peace to their possessor. Thought and purpose. Until thought is linked with purpose, there is no intelligent accomplishment. With the majority of the barrack of thoughts allowed to drift upon the ocean of life aimlessly in a wise, and such drifting must not continue to avoid him who would stay clear of catastrophe and destruction. They who have no central purpose in their life fall on easy prey to petty worries and fears, troubles, and self-pitying, all of which are indications of weakness which lead thus as surely and deliberately planned sins to failure and happiness. Loss for weakness cannot persist in the power evolving universe. A man should conceive of a legitimate purpose in his heart and set out to accomplish it. He should make this purpose the centralizing point of his thoughts. It may take the form of spiritual ideal, or it may be worldly object according to his nature at the time being, but whichever it is, he should steadily focus his thought forces upon the subject which he has set up before him. He should make this purpose his supreme duty and should devote himself to its attainment, not allowing his thoughts to wander away into ephemeral fancies, longing, and imaginings. He is the loyal road to self-control and true concentration of thought, even if he fails again and again to accomplish his purpose, as he necessarily must until the weakness is overcome. The strength of character gained will be the measure of this true success, and this will form a new starting point of the future power and triumph. Those who are not prepared for the apprehension of the great purpose should fix their thought upon the flawless performance of the duty, no matter how insignificant the task may appear. Only in this way can the thoughts be guided and focused resolution of energy developed. With being done, there is nothing which may not be accomplished. The weakest soul, knowing its own weakness, believing this truth that strength can only be developed by effort and practice, will, thus believing at once, begin to exert itself, and adding effort to effort, patience to patience, and strength to strength, will never cease to develop and will at last grow divinely strong. As the physically weak man can make himself strong by careful and patient training, so the man of the weak thoughts can make them strong by exercising himself in right thinking. To put away aimlessness and weakness and to begin to think with purpose is to enter the rank of those strong ones who would recognize failure as one of the pathways of attainment, who will make all conditions serve them, and who think strongly, attempt fearlessly, and accomplish masterfully. Having conceived of his purpose, the man should mark out the straight pathway to his achievement, looking neither to right nor left. Doubts and fears should be rigorously excluded, which are the disintegrating elements which break up the straight line of effort, rendering it crooked, ineffectual, and useless. Thoughts of doubt and fear never accomplish anything and never can. They always lead to failure, purpose, energy, power to do, and all strong thoughts cease when doubt and fear creep in. The will to do springs from the knowledge that we can do without. Doubt and fear are the great enemies of knowledge. He who encourages them does not slay them. Thoughts himself at every step. He who has conquered doubt and fear has conquered failure. His every thought is allied with power, and all difficulties are very met and wisely overcome. His purposes are seasonally planted, and they bloom and bring forth fruit that does not fall prematurely to the ground. Thought allied fearlessly to purpose becomes creative force, and he who knows this is ready to become something higher and stronger than a mere bundle of wavering thoughts and fluctuating sensation. Who does not this has become the conscious and intelligent voider of his mental powers, the thought factor and achievement. All that a man achieves and all that he fails to achieve is the direct result of his own thought in a justly ordered universe, where laws of which ties would mean total destruction and individual responsibility must be absolute. A man's weakness and strength, purity, impurity are his own and not another man's. They are brought about by himself and not by another, and they can only be altered by himself, never by another. His condition is also his own and not another man's. His suffering and his happiness are evolved from within as he thinks, so is he as he continues to think, so he remains. A strong man cannot help a weaker unless his weaker is willing to be helped, and even when the weak man has become strong of himself, he must by of his own effort develop the strength which he admires in another, none but himself can alter his condition. It has been usual for men to think and say many men are slaves because one is oppressor, let us say the oppressor. Those who, however, there is amongst an increasing few tendency to reverse this judgment and say one man is an oppressor because many are slaves. Let us despise the slaves. The truth is that the oppressor and the slave are cooperated in ignorance, and while seeming to afflict each other are in reality afflicting themselves. A perfect knowledge perceives the action of the law is the weakness of the oppressed and the misapplied power of the oppressor. The perfect love, seeing the suffering which both states entail, condemning the perfect compassion embraces both oppressor and oppressed. He who has conquered weakness and has put away all selfish thoughts belongs neither to oppressor nor oppressed. He is free. A man can only rise, conquer, and achieve by lifting up his thoughts. He can only remain weak and abject and miserably by refusing to lift up his thoughts. Before the man can achieve anything, even in worldly things, he must lift his thoughts above slavish animal indulgence. He may not, in order to succeed, give up all animality and selfishness by any means, but a portion of it must at least be sacrificed. A man whose first thought is bestial indulgence could neither think clearly nor plan methodically. He could not find and develop his latent resources and trade in any undertaking. Not having convinced mindfully to control his thoughts, he is not in a position to control affairs and to adopt serious responsibility. He is not fit to act independently and stand alone, but he is limited only by his thoughts which he chooses. There can be no progress, no achievement without sacrifice in a man's worldly success. Will be in the measure that he sacrifices his country's animal thoughts and fixes his mind on the development of his plans and the strengthening of his resolution and self-reliance. And the higher he lifts his thought, the more manly, upright, and righteous he becomes, the greater will be his success, the more blessed and enduring will be his achievements. The universe does not favor the greedy, the dishonest, vicious, although on a mere surface it may sometimes appear to do so. It helps the honest, the magnanimous, and the virtuous. All the great teachers of the ages have declared that in varying forms, and to prove and to know, a man has but to persist in making prints and more virtues by lifting up his thoughts. Intellectual achievements are the result of the thought concentrated in the search of the knowledge and for the beautiful and the true in life and nature. Such achievements may be sometimes connected with vanity and ambition, but those are not the outcome of those characteristics. They are the natural outgrowth of long and arduous effort and of pure and unselfish thoughts. Spiritual achievements for the consummation of the holy aspirations. He who lives constantly in the consumption of noble and lofty thoughts, who dwell upon all that is pure and selfless, will, as surely as the sun reaches its zenith and the moon is full, become wise and noble in character and rise in a position of influence and blessedness. Achievement of whatever kind is the crown of effort, the diadem of thought. By the aid of the self-control, resolution, purity, righteousness, and well-directed thought, a man descends. By the aid of animality, indolence, impurity, corruption, and confusion of thought, a man descends. A man may rise to his high success in the world and even lofty altitudes of the spiritual realm, and again descend into this weakness and wretchedness by allowing arrogant, selfish, and corrupt thoughts to take possession of him. Victories attained by right thought can only be maintained only by the watchfulness. Many give way, vain success is assured and happily fall back into failure. All achievements, whether in the business, intellectual, or spiritual world, are the result of definitely directed thought, are governed by the same law and are the same method. The only difference lies in the object of attainment. He who accomplishes little must sacrifice little. He who would achieve much must sacrifice much. He who would attain highly must sacrifice greatly. Vision and idols. The dreamers are the saviors of the world, as the visible world is sustained by the invisible. So man, through all the trials and sins and sorts of vocations, are nourished by the beautiful visions of the solitary dreamers. Humanity cannot forget its dreamers. It cannot Let the idols fade and die. Let lives. It lives in them, he knows them as the realities which it shall one day see and know. Composer, sculptor, painter, poet, prophet, sage, these are the makers of the afterworld, the architects of heaven. The world is beautiful because they have lived without them, they bring humanity to perish. He who cherishes a beautiful vision and lofty ideal in his heart will one day realize that Columbus cherished a great vision of another world, and he discovered it, God Ignatius fostered the vision of the multiplicity of the worlds and a wider universe, and revealed in Buddha held the vision of the spiritual world of endless beauty and perfect peace, and he entered into it. Cherish your visions and cherish your idols. Cherish the music that stirs in your heart and the beauty that forms in your mind, the loneliness that craves your purest thoughts, loveliness that drifts, your purest thoughts, for out of them will grow the delightful conditions, all heavenly environment of peace. If you but remain true to them, your world will at last be built. To desires, to obtain, to aspire, to achieve, shall man's basest desires receive the fullest measure of gratification, and his purest aspiration is starved for lack of sustenance. Such is not the law, such is the condition of thing, can never obtain. Ask and receive, dream lofty dreams, and you, as you dream, you shall become. Your vision is a promise of what you shall one day be. Your ideal is a prophecy of what you shall at last